welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really wild paradox. We are going to explore how a tiny, literal 10-square-foot burger stand completely threw out the modern fast food playbook and somehow still became this massive, untouchable cult empire. It is a crazy story of strict family control, uncompromising quality, and honestly, just a relentless dedication to doing things the old-fashioned way. So let's just hit the ground running with a number that kind of blows my mind. $3 billion. That is the estimated net worth of In-N-Out's sole heiress, Lynsi Snyder. $3 billion. That is a jaw-dropping amount of wealth for a company that, at the end of the day, sells relatively cheap hamburgers, right? But to really grasp how they reached this massive valuation, we've got to look at just how differently they operate compared to everyone else. Because this is the core of the whole paradox. In-N-Out operates around 347 locations, mostly scattered across a few western and southern states. Now compare that to the global mega chains they're competing with, which literally have tens of thousands of locations all over the planet. They managed to achieve this astronomical success while intentionally resisting the whole hyper-growth strategy that basically every other massive competitor completely relies on. It kind of makes you stop and wonder, is rapid expansion really the only path to the top? Which brings us to Section 1, a 10-square-foot beginning, the roots of a rule-breaking empire. It all started back in 1948 in Baldwin Park, California, with founders Harry and Esther Snyder. And Harry, well, he was an innovator right out of the gate. After spending all day sweating over a hot grill cooking burgers, he'd go home and spend his nights tinkering away in his garage. And what he came up with was the pioneering two-way speaker box. By doing this, he actually beat massive chains to the punch, creating a system that let hungry motorists order their food without ever leaving their cars. He essentially created California's very first true drive-thru experience. But you know what's really fascinating about their history? It's how incredibly slow and deliberate they were with every single milestone. Unlike today's brands that are just rushing to roll out some crazy new product every quarter to spike sales, In-N-Out just let their menu and brand evolve completely organically over decades. I mean, get this, it took them 27 years just to officially add real ice cream milkshakes to the menu. Moving into Section 2, the menu that never changes, a commitment to uncompromising quality. So their entire operational philosophy can basically be summed up in 3 words: no cutting corners. Back in the day, Harry would personally visit the meat and produce markets before dawn, and he laid down these ridiculously strict quality rules that they still follow to this day. There are absolutely 0 freezers or microwaves in any In-N-Out store. None. They use their own in-house butchers, potatoes. They are washed and sliced fresh right there in the store. The lettuce is hand-leafed. In a fast food world that is just obsessed with cheap automation, this is a masterclass in protecting your core product. And because they stubbornly kept their main menu completely static for so long, something pretty magical happened. A secret menu started to organically develop, driven entirely by customer requests. People started decoding these simple, fresh ingredients into absolute cult classics. You've probably heard of them. Animal Style gets you a mustard-cooked patty with extra spread, pickles, and grilled onions. Protein Style swaps the bun for hand-leafed lettuce, and the famous Flying Dutchman, which was actually created by Harry's son, Guy Snyder, is literally just 2 beef patties and 2 slices of cheese, no bun, no nothing. Let's look at Section 3, the anti-franchise business model, prioritizing people over rapid profits. When author Stacy Perman wrote her book on the company, she was famously completely stonewalled by In-N-Out's highly secretive leadership. But amazingly, her final verdict on them was still overwhelmingly positive. She really highlighted how they stubbornly refused to franchise out or take the company public. Instead, they kept everything under tight, strict family control. And here is a huge takeaway for modern business. They are famous for paying their restaurant workers and managers way above minimum wage, offering actual viable career paths instead of just your typical high-turnover fast food gig. But of course, there is a direct trade-off to this refusal to compromise. By 1976, which is almost 30 years after they first opened, they had only grown to a total of 18 restaurants. Why so few? Well, because they simply refused to build a store if it was further than a day's drive from their own patty-making facilities. If a truck couldn't deliver fresh, never-frozen ingredients every single day, they just wouldn't build there. It was agonizingly slow growth by Wall Street standards, but the quality was never, ever sacrificed. Which brings us to a heavier part of the story in Section 4, family tragedy and resilience, preserving the core vision through decades of loss. Behind all of this incredible corporate success, the Snyder family actually endured a truly heartbreaking string of tragedies. Harry passed away from lung cancer in 1976, and that left his 24-year-old son, Rich, to step up as president. Rich did an amazing job growing the company, but then he tragically died in a plane crash in 1993. So his brother, Guy, had to take the helm, but sadly, he passed away from a drug overdose in 1999. Finally, Esther, the matriarch who had kept the books from day one, passed away in 2006 at the age of 86. And suddenly, this entire multi-billion-dollar empire fell to Harry and Esther's sole grandchild, Lynsi. But what's truly remarkable is that despite all of these profound personal losses, the family didn't just preserve their core vision, they deepened it. Rich Snyder was a passionate Christian, and he's actually the one who started the tradition of printing tiny Bible verses on the bottom lip of their beverage cups. He also knew they had to find a way to scale their extreme standards. So in 1984, he launched In-N-Out University to rigorously train all their managers. Through every single tragedy and leadership transition, the family held the line and absolutely refused to alter the brand's DNA. So let's turn to Section 5, Occult Cultural Phenomenon, the burger joint that won Hollywood and beyond. Now, if you've ever actually been to an In-N-Out or even just seen photos of them, you've probably noticed a very specific architectural quirk right out front. And maybe you've asked yourself, where in the world do those crossed palm trees come from? Well, the answer is just fantastically quirky. It turns out founder Harry Snyder was a massive fan of the 1963 classic comedy, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. If you haven't seen it, there's a huge buried treasure in the movie hidden under a giant W that's made out of 4 crossed palm trees. Harry loved it so much that he adopted it, planting those crossed trees in front of his restaurants as a symbol that every single location was his own personal treasure. How cool is that? And those cultural ties just run so deep. I mean, they've got this decades-long connection to Southern California drag racing culture, going all the way back to 1965 when Harry invested in a local drag strip. Today, these burgers are openly praised by world-renowned, Michelin-starred chefs like Thomas Keller. They drop custom-designed t-shirts every year that fans literally collect. And if you're a diehard fan, you can even go visit a pristine replica museum of their original 1948 stand. It's way more than fast food now. It is a full-blown lifestyle brand. Which leaves us all with one final, pretty provocative thought. In our current era, one that is completely defined by endless corporate expansion, massive global franchising, and robotic fast food automation, is it possible that a tiny burger stand's stubborn 1948 philosophy is actually the ultimate blueprint for modern success? By fiercely protecting their product, genuinely taking care of their employees, and completely ignoring Wall Street, In-N-Out proved that you don't actually have to change the world to conquer it. Sometimes you really just have to slice your own potatoes and stay true to your roots. What do you think?